Welcome to the Sisters for Prevention YouTube channel and podcast. My name is Judy Fitzgerald, and I'm your host. My very special guest today is Chris White. Chris's story is so amazing and complicated, we have recorded a 3-part series to include his entire journey. We will have links to part 2 and 3 at the end of this program. Chris and I have been serving as advisory advocates for a wonderful organization in Washington called Friends of Cancer Research. This gave us the opportunity to actually meet each other in person last week. So Chris's story starts with when he tried every possible treatment to beat his melanoma. Yet after 3 surgeries, multiple rounds of chemotherapy, and 3 attempts with immunotherapy, he was told to consider hospice and get his end-of-life affairs in order. That was December 2019. Remarkably today, Chris is cancer-free, all thanks to a novel cell and gene therapy. It is now my very great honor to welcome my friend, Chris White. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely, Judy. First of all, thank you so much for having me on, and let me share my story and my cancer experience. I'm now 42 years old, but when I was 36 and in 2018, I was diagnosed with what's called anorectal mucosal melanoma. I thought I had a hemorrhoid, and it turns out it wasn't a hemorrhoid. For the first, 5 or 6 months, I did nothing about it until an additional lump ended up showing up in my groin. And that's when I went to go get looked at and checked out, and eventually a surgery led to the pathology of what is, metastatic malignant melanoma. Eventually I learned, mucosal melanoma. So mucosal melanoma makes up 1% of all melanoma. It forms in mucous membranes, and it has no known cause, unlike cutaneous melanoma, which, is known to be caused by UV rays and is highly preventable, 95% survivor rate, up to 5 years if caught early. Back in 2018, I'm 36 years old. I had been a new home construction manager for a couple of years. Prior to doing that, I had bounced around, some career, different choices, got out of college in 2005 with my degree in history, lived in the North Texas area, and went to go work at a local private country club. Essentially, it's like, how you've heard of ski bums, who just, they love hanging out, on the mountain so they can get in, run. And that was essentially what I was doing, but in the golf business. And after doing that for about 10 years and trying a few different careers, decided to make a change in new home construction. And so that was in 2016. I'm an uncle of about 6 or so nieces and nephews, and a couple additional bonus nieces and nephews through my step siblings, or I say bonus siblings. I'm single. I never had children. I didn't have any pets, and I was just doing the grind, going to work. I was so intently busy on work that when my first signs started to show up, that I never went and got checked out. But I initially thought I might have had a hemorrhoid or something. I mean, I've never had one before, but it was the assumption that might be what was going on. And so I did nothing about it. And then eventually I had another lump that grew in my groin, and that's what I went to go get checked out. And my doctor sent me to a general surgeon after no antibiotics worked. And that general surgeon thought I might have had a rare hernia. And he's like, if it's a hernia, we'll fix it. If it's not, then we'll go from there. And when I woke up, he said, it wasn't a hernia, and it was a lymph node, and we sent it to pathology and go get your hemorrhoid looked at. And I did that, and just said, this isn't a hemorrhoid. What's your pathology from that surgery you just had? And I said, I don't know, but I should know by the end of the week. And the next day I got the call that told me, hey, this is real serious. Go see an oncologist. And the following week I went and saw the oncologist, and they told me really rare melanoma, definitely, seek out a second opinion. Would I mind doing that? And that's what I did. And that's what started off my journey.
This is so important because when I first heard the word melanoma, when you and I were talking, a lot of people don't know about this type of melanoma. As you said, it's very rare. I mean, I know how many people as we get older develop hemorrhoids. And so the thing is that you got to be aware of your body. And
100%.
I guess goal here is to say, if something doesn't seem right, get checked out, right? Because thank goodness.
Absolutely. No matter, it's so simple when it comes down to it. The main theme of it all is if something's wrong or off, you need to go get checked, point blank, period. There's a reason why we all have insurance. If you have insurance, you know, you need to use it. Putting yourself second or your health second and not first, you're only going to be as good to yourself as you are, you know, 100% within yourself. I kept the oxygen mask on an airplane falls. And that's why they always say, put it on yourself first before helping somebody else. But 100% of you is better than not 100% of you. And I wasn't thinking of me at the time. And that's one of the main things that always comes down to is that you don't know what you need to know until you need to know it. So, and nobody else is going to know your own body but yourself. Like the type of melanoma I had, it makes up 1% of all melanoma. And so melanoma itself is the most deadliest form of skin cancer. Cancer itself has multiple different types of variations, but melanoma itself, it probably gets a little over 100,000 or so citizens within the United States per year. And so 1% of that, you're looking at maybe 1,000 people. And then within that 1,000 people, since it forms in mucous membranes, half of that 1,000, it forms in the sinonasal cavities, you know, ear, nose, and throat. A lot of people think they might have polyps or something, you know, in their nose. And then the other half of that is composed of people like myself, where 25% think they might have, you know, a hemorrhoid or something, but it also can fold in a lot of females in the vulva, vagina, penile areas. But anywhere where you have a mucous membrane has melanocytes, and you can get melanoma in those spots. And so it's an extremely aggressive, it's very rare. And that's one of the things is it's like a sneaky cancer because it's disguised itself as something like, oh, it's no big deal. You know, like it's something that you think it's a polyp, you think it's a hemorrhoid. Like you don't ever assume the worst. Maybe psychologically you don't want to think it is, but that's exactly what I was thinking and why I didn't go to the doctor for 5-6 months.
So how many, I was going to say back up, in between when you thought it was a hemorrhoid till you discovered that it was cancer, you said was 6 months, you think, in that time frame?
Yeah, so in the very beginning of January, because I remember, you know, in North Texas, you know, it doesn't really become winter until after the first of the year. And then you're really mainly looking at about 6 weeks between January and February where, you know, it's cold. The wind's coming out the north 20 miles an hour. You know, it doesn't snow. It just ices. I mean, it's nasty. You know, during a lot of the Christmas seasons, you know, it's fall. I remember going through Christmas and then into the beginning of the year, and I was working a lot and everything, but I just felt kind of sweaty down below, you know, for one way to say it. And I was just like, that's kind of weird. And before I knew it, I thought maybe like, I was like, well, you know, like I have like a zit or something in that spot. Like I was not being hygienically clean or something. I mean, I didn't know, but that was in the beginning of the year, right into January, because in March every year I go snowboarding. And I remember that's like when I have PTO or vacation time, that's what I would do. And there's this sweet little window that's like post President's Day, but before spring break for all the college and high school kids start getting there. And, you know, the mountains get a solid base. It's like, you know, the best snow. It's not crowded. You go during the week. And so, and I remember going out there and then sitting on the lift. And I think I wrote about this in one of the first chapters of my book, but I remember thinking like, oh man, like this sucks. This is uncomfortable, you know, and it was 2 of those 10-day biotics. That's about 20 days, give or plus the weekends, you know, so you figure in maybe like a month in between. It wasn't until, you know, sometime into that May that I started to see him. And then it was in June that I got to the surgeon. And then once I saw him, I was able to get in for surgery within, you know, a few days to take care of this hernia, you know, so, but it was, I always kicked myself for going a little bit sooner and just to get it checked. I had phenomenal insurance. My employer is very understanding. I had one of those jobs where when you step away from it, you know, it takes so much more to catch up the longer you're gone. You know, that was always in my head.
Yeah, there's always something else to do, right? I talk to so many young moms who let their breast cancer go because the kids had dance recitals or something when they discovered it. And it's just a natural human being thing to put other things before. I always like to ask, when you hear those words for the first time, you have cancer, to me, I remember that very moment, I was like a deer in the headlights because like you, I had no family history.
The words melanoma, and I was trying to figure out how it made sense. It was, so I always associate that with, sun tanning and such. And I'm sitting there thinking I wasn't, like bent over with my rear end propped towards the sky. Like, I mean, I'm sitting there trying to think how, like, what do you mean? Like, how would this even happen? Like, I was just blown away. I was like, I was stunned. I was so stunned, and I say this in so many different interviews, and every time I talk about it. But if the movie Fight Club that came out in 1999 with Edward Norton and Brad Pitt, Edward Norton's character is just called the narrator, and then Brad Pitt's character is called Tyler Durden. It was just kind of like I stepped outside of myself and was like, oh crap, it's like I could see myself, and I vividly remember the apartment I was in and all that, and like the time of the day. And because I got this call at like 3:30, 3:40 on a Friday afternoon, and the doctor's office and everywhere closes at 4 p.m. And he personally called me and told me the news, and then said, gave me the phone number for an oncologist. Said, he gave me the news, and then said, call the oncologist immediately to get it on schedule, because they're about to close. It's almost that time of the day. And then he also told me, to not tell any family members, or go and look it up on the internet. And I, was like, I'm single. I don't have any, kids, or I'm not in a relationship. So, I definitely didn't want to go to an appointment like that by myself. So, my mom and my dad, even though they've been split up for 30 some odd years, they were still, both are local. Both of my siblings and their families are local. So I called them up to let them know, so I could have someone come with me. But I got a hold of the oncologist and got in for the very first appointment on, the following Tuesday morning. So I still had to go throughout the weekend and then that Monday, but I didn't have any answers. So I knew that if I went to go start looking it up, then I would have questions. Everybody else would have questions. And I myself don't specifically remember if I started looking it up. But, my family did, of course. And, I could just tell by the look on their faces, like how big their eyes were and everything. But
did you have any clue at that point how serious this was?
No, not at all. Like I literally knew nothing about cancer other than what I'd seen through like, TV and movies throughout the years. I just knew that cancer, you cut it out. The treatments that were out there are, you do chemo. There's, some people have radiation, but surgery, chemo, and radiation, you get to smoke some pot, you lose your hair, you're going to throw up, you're going to get some extra love. But I mean, like, that's literally the basis of what I thought cancer was about. Like, I had no clue about other types of therapies. I had heard the word clinical trials, but I mean, I didn't have a clue like what that entailed, or, the advancements that have been made within the past couple of decades. I was about as naive as you can get when it comes to it. I literally just kind of positive about it. It was like, well, I feel fine. But they're telling me I got cancer. Everybody, come on, like, come with me. Like, hopefully it's going to be okay. But it's one of those like things where we all have an expiration date, but you never really think about it. But it's like this visual of seeing like an actual hourglass, and then it's like, okay, well, now you can actually see the sand dripping from it. And then it becomes like real, but you don't know how fast sand is going to fall from that. But that's exactly how I explain it. But I had no clue what was about to happen.
I talk about BC and AD, before cancer and after diagnosis.
I love how you said that.
It's like a split in the road. And like you say, at the time you're diagnosed, you don't know what you don't know. And Dr. Google is not your friend. It's so important to tell other people is that do not go to an appointment by yourself, because it's so important to have someone taking notes. Because as you know, I'll let you talk about, I remember being in the office and it was like somebody was talking another language, and I was like an out of body experience. Like I knew I was there. I didn't know what they were saying or what, I had my husband with me and he took notes. I actually have since then suggested to people that they bring a tape recorder or record on their phone, now
100%.
that, right now that we have that possibility now. But so when you first found out, when did you find out how serious this was. Was it at that first oncology appointment, or what happened next?
So at that first appointment, I had brought everybody with me, and just like you were mentioning, it was like to me, I was listening like it was Charlie Brown's parents were talking. I don't,
I heard, I didn't want to steal that line from you. That was in your book. I didn't want to steal
I
that line.
mean,
By the way, this is Chris's book. It's amazing. You should buy it. After you hear his story, you're going to want to buy it. It's called Killing Cancer with Tills, and we're going to get to the Tills part in a little bit. So it was
yeah.
like Charlie Brown.
It was just this, like they're speaking all kinds of vernacular that I might have heard before, but I had no clue what it meant. Like I remember being asked shortly after that, like when I was at work, they're like, "What's your prognosis?" And I was like, "I don't even know what that word means." I was just trying to say what I knew at the time, what was going on. I didn't know like what that word means. When I didn't even know what the word oncology really mean. I just
Mm-hmm.
I so but yeah, it was one of those things. It was like, this is a completely different, like, not like another city or county or state or country or continent. It was a whole nother planet and universe. I mean, like, it was way out there beyond my grasp. And so, but yeah, like having all of my family there, definitely note taking. And then yeah, like we recorded every one of my appointments, because
Wow.
even though you're taking notes and, we're all listening and stuff, it's like, well, being able to go back and reference, that was extremely huge. But the seriousness of it, like I really didn't know until I got down. I'm in North Texas and I went to Texas Oncology, but they were all talking words like that I didn't really understand because of the primary source, and they were using words like squamous and of this and that. And my oncologist at Texas Oncology just knew it was rare based upon my pathology results. SOX 10 marked this, and blah blah blah. And so it was like, okay, we need to move pretty quickly. It's already known. If you already had the original tumor I had that I got removed was the lymph node in my groin, but that was the one that came from my pathology, and that was my second tumor. The first tumor was the one from my rectum, and so then I knew at that moment, like, hey, that's where the source came from. And so then I got that removed. But at that very first oncology appointment, they went ahead, and they ran a full set of labs up on me. And they were like, hey, now that we know your pathology, let's get you in for a PET scan, since we know you have local metastasis from your rectum to your groin, to see if it's anywhere else. And so, I didn't really know what the different types of scans were. But the reason I eventually down the road end up knowing it was extremely serious is because they were able to get me in for a PET scan the very next day. And the way they were able to do that is because my oncologist main PA, the RN, she was able to talk to her connection at the imaging place, and they let me in before the place even opened.
Wow.
So like at the first appointments, like at 7 a.m., they got me in like at 6 or 6:30. I remember the guy was there and he like had to go manually open up the automatic door and all of that. And so, just her sense of urgency to get me in for that scan that fast, like eventually like rang some bells, like, oh crap, this is real serious. But once I got down to MD Anderson and you had that first appointment, which was about 2 weeks from my initial surgery, that's when they're the ones who told me all about, here's the type of, cancer this is. These are the statistics, the chance to make it 5 years is like 14%, no known cause, no standard of care. That what I thought I knew about cancer, like, hey, surgery, cut it out. He was the one who told me, is
Mm-hmm.
like, as soon as you go to cut it out, it pisses off your cancer. It gets mad and it wants to run. So if I would
Mm-hmm.
have saw him first, we would have done some sort of systemic treatment first, which is now called, neoadjuvant treatment. But as soon
Mm-hmm.
as you go to do a surgery, it aggravates and makes the cells mad, and they start, moving around. When you're diagnosed with it already with local metastasis, I was stage 3C, and I didn't know, the chart of, 1 to 4 and how all that works, but sounded pretty serious. Amount of different people he wanted me to see and test I needed to take to complete and make up the multidisciplinary team was just a lot. And I couldn't get it all done in that first meeting. And so I came back, in the first week of August to do that. But it included seeing the radiologist, surgical oncologist, the main guys. There was like a handful of people. I did ultrasounds, MRIs, some more CTs. And so just the amount of everything that just went into figuring out like where it's at and what are we going to do just kind of was like, oh, this isn't just like, oh, hey, like, you had some cancer, let's cut it out. The seriousness started to really sink in, if I like emotionally like showed it or displayed it, but, it sent my mind, through a tornado.
Yeah, it's like they're giving you all these directions and you're just kind of following like a little sheep because you really don't know what it's going to be like. And, even though you ask questions, nobody can really prepare you for what that, I call it a journey, but whatever that process is going to be like. So back up for a second, because you just said an important word there. So the melanoma was a squamous cell carcinoma?
No,
Oh,
it was
okay.
it said it was a possible carcinoma, but my initial oncologist, she's a hematologist and
Uh-huh.
an oncologist, but due to the rarity of the pathology, that melanoma, possible carcinoma, SOX10, mark something, it was a rare pathology. And so it was an unsure of exactly what type of melanoma, because that would
Okay.
depend on what the treatment plan would be. She had initially mentioned, that if it's your cutaneous type of melanoma, then that's where they often do surgery followed up with single dose Keytruda adjuvant immunotherapy, and there's kind of lines like that, and I started hearing those kind of words. But it would all depend upon the specific origin, the actual specific type of it and everything. And but she admitted to me that was over her head, and that in order
Mhm.
to have the best possible outcome, I would need to see someone that actually specialized in this. And that's why I was like, yeah, I'm down to go anywhere, do anything. And it's only, I think, almost a 4 hour drive to get from where I live in Dallas down to MD Anderson in Houston. Yeah, I
So
mean, I will always be grateful that she didn't, just try to wing it and stuff. But she was like, hey, like, I'm not an expert in this, and you should see an expert. And she said that, she'd try to do her best to work with them, which I was able to navigate. But
that is so important. That is such a rare thing because many times when I talk to patients that have not had a good outcome, they stayed with their local treatment group, their local doctor group, and they don't admit to them that they don't know the right way. And so they just do standard of care the best that they know, but they're not up on all the latest developments and all the latest technology. So, and the excuse I get from people is, oh, I couldn't get a second opinion that would hurt my doctor's feelings. Honey, this is your life. Oh,
yeah,
your doctor's not God, so don't make him God, okay? And I don't think he thinks he's God, but
100%.
that's too much responsibility to put on someone. But so when did you actually get your first treatment? Stay tuned for part 2 and 3 of Chris's incredible story. And special guests again to my friend Chris for his time today. And please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. You will help our cause by allowing me to get the word out to more people. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and may God bless.